How good you'd be if your motivation was golf and being the best at golf and going out and being one of those like athlete psychopaths. It's such a weird, and I can't work out whether I love it or hate it at the moment. It's really difficult.
You know when you see someone who's super famous in real life, there's that shock element of they're always a bit smaller than you think, and it's always like, oh, that's that actual person in real life. It's like, oh, you're a legend, Gaza, and shook his hand, and that was that. But yeah.
Do you put like a shot clock on it? Just so
people can count to 8.
You'd like to think so, but there's...
Hello, welcome along to Not Another Sports Pod, episode number 52 with myself, David, and Mr. Oliver Wilson. On the pod this week, I want to talk about Scotty Scheffler winning the Open. Ollie Wilson was there, can you believe? I want to talk about Alexander Usyk being the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world for the second time, and him saying that 38 is only the start. Music to my ears. Marcus Rashford's on his way to Barcelona. Why? Don't understand that at all. But first of all, let's just commemorate this moment, Ollie, because it is pod number 52. And you know when you see those really big heavyweight US pods that have been going for well over a decade, and you see episode 1456, and you think, how is it possible they could get to that milestone? Well, I can see it, mate. I can see it on the misty horizon. As long as both of us stay alive and sport keeps trundling on, the long road to 1,000 pods a decade away or longer is possible.
I just wonder if we'll be, in a big studio by then. We'll have enhanced the production. Obviously, the video stream will be kicking off. We'll be live streaming from major events as well at that point. And will we have lost the common touch that, these early episodes makes them so great? Or are we going to be willing to not sell our souls out like that? Just take the money, because it'll come, obviously. But just...
Mate, we'll be a Chinese crypto coin backed as we sit in the, in our ivory tower at some of these sporting events. I hope and pray, but no, of course, we will never lose the common touch.
Talking of the common touch, isn't just going to live sport and being in the hub of it just great? Like, it is great. If you're in the mix of it, I did some bits over the weekend with some other work people and stuff, but going and just standing with other people and watching and appreciating it, it can be. It's sometimes the thing I hate the most, I will say. Like when you're in a crowd or in a pub or something watching football and you get people saying stuff that they don't really have a clue about. It's so irritating when you've got that in your ear. But there's something different about, and I'm going to go into the golf, is that everybody just feels so much appreciation for what these guys are doing because it's so difficult a sport, and 90% of the people there have probably picked up a golf club and tried it and gone like, oh, I can't do this. So you're just watching admiration that they're able to put it anywhere near where they want to. And it's nice to be part of the crowd. It's nice to just not blend in, because I don't think I stand out at any point, but just be in the real thick of it, just watching with randomers on the other side. You start having conversations with the odd random person next to you. It's a beautiful thing, man.
Well, let's dive straight in, Mr. Ollie Wilson. So at the start of the week, well, first of all, I want to say this. Harold Wilson, the British Prime Minister in the 60s, once said that a week is a long time in politics. But week is just a long time, full stop. Because at the start of the week, I believe on Monday, I sent Ollie Wilson a link where Scotty Scheffler essentially said, what's the point? He said, this is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from a sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of the deepest places of your heart. And yet, on Sunday evening, Mr. Wilson, he's saying... he's saying he's living out his dreams, to quote, in a sport that's earned him 65 million in prize money this year. So yes, a week is an awful long time in sport, and Scotty Scheffler has turned that frown upside down, I believe.
This is a really difficult one. Let's go before we get into what actually happened on the golf course. Then let's get into the hoopla that was around Scotty this week. If he comes out and makes these comments about how golf doesn't fulfill him in his heart, and as somebody that comes on here and bemoans all this, like, the falseness that you get from athletes these days when they're pushing products and when they're trying to just sell themselves as a brand and etc. There's something really nice to hear an athlete say, look, golf it's something that I'm really good at, but it's not my motivator. It's not my drive. And I think the only reason that we're weirded out by this comment is because he is so good and so much better than everybody else. Every single player after that fourth round said, except for Scotty, said he's in another level. Scotty's just in another level, and everybody else is just trying to be near him right now. So we're used to seeing the greats be that driven, and I'm not saying Scotty hasn't put the work in, but he's not that psychopath level of Jordan where he's, creating stories and adversity. He just goes out there and plays golf. But you see that he really cares about, he's a big man of faith and he loves his family. He became a dad last year. And those are what seemingly are the two biggest things for him. But I also struggle with it because I'm somebody that like everybody would be like, well, I would love to be given $80 million in the last 12 months for playing a sport extremely well. How is that not one of the biggest things in your life? Because it looks like it should be, because you're so good at it and you're so successful at it. And he doesn't do any of the sponsorship and advertising. Rory won the Masters and he's on the chat shows and kind of everywhere. You don't see that from Scotty. Scotty's a tailor-made golfer. Like, they sponsor him. He's got the tailor-made bag for the Open, the special one that they create for all of their signature players. And they still use Rory McIlroy's face more than Scotty Scheffler. Because Scheffler's like, well, I don't care about all of this. He enjoys the sport of golf and winning. And I've no doubt that he enjoys the sport of golf and winning. I'm just torn between whether I love the fact that he's like, no, but family and stuff is way more important to me and this is my motivator. Or if I'm like, well, forget that. Don't let that be your motivator. Imagine what your motivator, how good you'd be if your motivation was golf and being the best at golf and going out and being one of those like athlete psychopaths. It's such a weird juxtaposition to have. And I can't work out whether I love it or hate it at the moment. It's really difficult.
I think what you say is so spot on in the sense that we bemoan sports stars for the generic, tailor-made, PR-ready response. And then finally, when someone comes out with a bit of, you know what, this is what I actually think, take it or leave it, we equally find a way to criticise that. It's a rare instance, though, Ollie, to be so supremely talented at something and yet also have that, obviously he does try, as you mentioned, but just to have that sense that actually it's not that important. And we're so used to, as you say, seeing the Cristiano Ronaldos, the uber extreme tunnel vision focus, let's nudge the 0.001% in my favour this way or that. It's very refreshing to see that. And
do you think an accountant doing his job is like, oh, crunching their numbers every day, I love doing that, that's what drives me, that's the thing that I get up for? There are very few people in this world where their job is their motivation. And even when it is, as soon as they have a family or, life takes certain paths down it, it could be anything. It could be a loved one that becomes unwell or anything. That job isn't the motivation immediately. It becomes something else completely. It's so normal. He just seems like a really normal guy. And however, we love to have our athletes be superhuman and not normal.
And how good is he, Ollie? Put it into context for maybe people that don't follow the sport the whole year round. Like, how good is he? How good can he become, given his comparatively young age, right? I mean, what's the ceiling here if he's around for the next decade or so?
So he's won 4 majors in his last 16 starts over the last 4 years. The only others to do that are Ben Hogan, who actually won 6, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger, Rory, and Brooks Koepka. And putting that into perspective, Scotty was also the runner-up at the the PGA in 2023 and was a putt away from a playoff at the US Open in 2022. So he could have easily had 6 potentially on another day. He's won, 25 starts in majors to win 4. Only Tiger, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus and Brooks Koepka have beaten that in terms of winning 4 majors. And winning 4 majors has already put him in the top 20 golfers of all time in terms of winning majors. There's a handful that are on 4, and then you go into the super elites like the Tigers, like the Jack Nicklauses, etc., that go into that. So Scotty Scheffler is starting to put up Tiger Woods level numbers at a similar point in his career when Tiger started to push and go big. And not only that, he's seen the weaknesses in his game at the moment over the last 2 years. And there were weaknesses, putting in particular. And he's gone out and started to work with one of the best putting coaches in the world, Phil Kenyon, and he's switched to a mallet putter, which makes putting slightly easier. You lose a bit of the control and touch, but it makes it easier to send the ball where you want to send it. And since then, he's become one of the best putters in the world. So he's cleaning up the weaknesses. And not only that, if he'd won by 1 more shot yesterday, he would have won by 5. He would have joined Tiger Woods and Walter Hogan as the only players to have multiple major wins in the same season by 5 shots. And those 2 seasons, it's Tiger in the early 2000s, I think it was, and Hogan in the 50s, are considered like 2 of the most supreme all-time major golfing seasons that anybody's ever had, quite rightly. So Scotty is right there with some of the greatest golfers in the world on the correct trajectory. And if it's sustained, it's a big problem. It's a really big problem for other golfers. We have a little gambling sweepstakes on the Masters and the Open this year. And we pick players, and we put players in different pots, so you can't just pick all the best guys, etc. And pot 1 probably has about 5 different golfers in it as like the real elites who are odds-on favourites to at least be top 10 finishers. And nobody picks Scotty Scheffler except for one person, because it's almost boring to pick Scotty because we're at the point where you're expecting him to win. And Scotty's at a point where, to put it in tennis terms, this is as if Novak Djokovic didn't have Federer or Nadal and everybody else below him was Andy Murray. That's what we're dealing with in golf right now. He's that good, and it's
a clear run to the potential of winning way more.
Oh yeah, I mean, what, he's 29, and he's got 4 majors. If he wins the US Open next year, it eclipses, all of the Rory stuff from the Masters this year just gets wiped away, because it's like, oh, another one's done the career Grand Slam because he's got 2 Masters and he won the PGA and the Open this year now. It completely eclipses Rory's kind of long grind to get there. And Scotty's like, oh, you had to grind to that? Oh man, yeah, I did that. Just took me a couple of years, really just knocked that one out of the park nice and easy. And yeah, it's, as I say, every golfer out there looks at him. And it's I can't work out again if it's good or bad for the sport. Did you watch any of it this weekend at all? Did you see any of the highlights or anything?
No, I didn't.
On the Sunday, I was so excited for the Open Sunday. I had a bit of time off, so let's just sit and chill and watch it all. And I found myself doing the worst thing in the world, which is like looking at the phone a little bit, because there wasn't any drama. It was so boringly consistent. And golf, when it's good, is boring. 2 shots onto a green, 2 putts for par, 1 putt for birdie. 3 shots onto a green on a par 5, 2 putt for par. Like, it just... And he doesn't really make mistakes, and he makes the difficult look easy. Whereas...
What was it like being there, Ollie?
Well, just quickly...
So you were there the Thursday. How many days were you there?
We did Wednesday and Thursday, so we did a practice day and the first day. Yeah.
And had you done it before, or did you know what to expect in terms of the vibe?
Yeah, so I've done the Thursday at Royal Liverpool 2 years ago, and then I did the Wednesday, Thursday last year at Royal Troon. So this was ticking off the England, Ireland, Scotland kind of box, basically, getting all 3 of the host nations. And it's... The Wednesday's really fun. Portrush is beautiful. Northern Ireland's coastline is stunning. It's just around the corner from Giant's Causeway, which we actually didn't have time to get to because we were doing so much other stuff around the place. Didn't have a pint of Guinness the whole 3.5 days I was in Ireland. It was ridiculous. That's the one thing I'm devastated about, but I digress. It's a beautiful golf course and a beautiful piece of land. And we spent the Wednesday just walking around. You see the players, they're going through their practice rounds. They're kind of taking multiple shots from a few different places around the green, trying to read the greens. Multiple different hole locations are being laid out for them, etc. And you can kind of hear them chatting. Matt Wallace was talking about how Shane Lowry had told him all the pubs to go to in Portrush kind of over the weekend and stuff like that. And you see them being real human beings. And it's a nice afternoon with no real pressure on anybody. No one's shooting a score or anything like that. And then you go to Thursday, and Thursday's just a different ball game completely, like the hushed tension around every single green. And we were on the opening tee box. I was on the opening tee box for the 3rd year in a row for the first knock of the Open, which is, it's such a great little spine-tingling buzz of just, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 153rd Open Championship on the tee from Ireland, Podrick Harrington. And it's like, 6:30. It's 6:30 in the morning. You barely had a coffee. You know, we were up at 4:45.
It's an early. I always forget whenever I sort of look at the golf or look how it's progressing. I always forget that first tee off time is early doors.
Yeah,
man.
and if you finish late and then have one of the early ones on like finish late on the Thursday and then have an early because it's reversed on the Friday, so then you've suddenly got a very short window for get some food, get to bed, and then get up again. And it's just that little buzz of energy and adrenaline of like anything can happen until that first tee shot is done. You have no idea who's going to do what. And Podrick Harrington won the US Seniors Open this year. So he was hitting the first tee shot. He's an Irishman. So, you know, there's a huge roar for him when he's on the tee. And yeah, it just gets your heart racing. And then you spend the rest of the day just walking around, seeing who you can trying to see every golf hole, all the decent holes on the course.
Is it mainly Brits, Ollie? Or like, imagine a fair few Americans in the crowd,
a lot
right?
of Yanks come over for it because they'll come over and do golfing holidays and then they'll get tickets for it. And they've spent a hefty penny to kind of get across. So what's 150 quid to go and watch the golf for the day? Yeah, it's fine. So, but a lot of Scandinavians because there's a lot of good Scandinavian players right now.
So a Chinese name up the leaderboard as
Yeah,
well.
Huang Tong Lee. Yeah, that was the thing I wanted. I was picturing Donald Trump's call to Scotty Scheffler on Saturday night, being like, "Don't embarrass us in front of China, don't you dare!" You know, because it was Huang Tong Lee and Scotty Scheffler as the final group going out on the Sunday, and it was like America against China. This is the global showdown we all wanted for all the trade routes right here. If Lee can knock Scheffler off his perch, it would have been a great story to have.
And any final takeaways in terms of the Ryder Cup coming up in the autumn? Because Rory did okay, didn't he? I mean, what other sort of takeaways could you extrapolate from what you saw and what happened?
I think the European side's pretty much sorted now. Like, I don't think anybody's really getting buffed out from last year. If there are going to be a couple of changes, yeah, maybe one of the Højgaards will get in or another one of the Scandos, but Nygaard Peterson maybe. But the American one seems really open now. Like, the live golfers have been poor in majors this year. I mean, there was a stat mentioned that Scotty Scheffler, and since live golf was created, Scotty Scheffler's won more majors than live golfers have. He's won 3, live golfers have won 2, and there's been 14 majors. And yeah, there wasn't, aside from Bryson DeChambeau, there's nobody else really on that live tour right now that's looking like they're kicking up any trees. So there's a few, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, etc., that might not be in the running for it for whatever reason. There might be a Ricky Fowler as well who's not really kind of been there. Jordan Spieth continues to not really perform in big competitions, whether he's just going to be a Ryder Cup player like an Ian Poulter. And there's a lot of young Americans kind of coming to the forefront a little bit, or younger Americans. Chris Gotterup won the Renaissance, the Scottish Open last week, and then finished 4th, I think it was, this week at the Open Championship. So he's an American who might be able to work his way off 2 really good weeks leading into it in September. And Keegan Bradley, as the captain of the US team, might need to pick himself because he might not make a top 6 spot. And then he's got a big decision of whether he wants to be a playing captain or whether he wants to pick 6 others. And it's a really interesting question. I don't think we've ever seen a playing captain in the Ryder Cup. And do you pick yourself? And if you lose, people say, well, you shouldn't have picked yourself. Or do you not pick yourself? And if you lose, people say, should have backed yourself. And it's a real interesting dilemma, that one, for Keegan Bradley right now.
Let's talk boxing. Alexander Usyk beating Daniel Dubois at Wembley. First of all, I mean, it's a sellout at Wembley, Ollie. It's 90,000. I mean, if you ever need to be reminded of how popular heavyweight boxing is in not just this country but beyond, I mean, there it is. Packed Wembley, unbelievable. I mean, heavyweight boxing is just insane, mate. Like, I watched the highlights, and the left hook to win it is just totally insane. And the scale and the power of these men and how it's even allowed to exist as a sport is just bonkers. I mean, it's not being glib to say it's enough to kill a man. I mean, it obviously is, because you can die from that kind of punch. Like, it's just totally insane to see it. And if you haven't watched any of the fight, like, do just look at that left hook, because it is just completely bonkers. I'm going to let Ollie talk, I think, more about Usyk and what this means for him and who's potentially next for him. And possibly more importantly, Ollie, it's interesting after a sporting event when someone wins and is so clear ahead of the field that people start to talk not about what he's done and what's next, but now the conversation is kind of, actually, where is Usyk in the pantheons? Where is he in the order of like the greatest ever? Those are some of the articles and the conversations coming out of the fight. So where do you stand with that, and what's next for him, and how good is it?
I think in terms of heavyweight champions of the world, like, he's up there with one of the best ever of all time. You know, be 2-time undisputed heavyweight champion of the world is an incredible feat. Having all of those belts, you know, we've spent years with, you know, people dancing around the kind of AJ fights and all that of when are we going to unite the belts, particularly when it was Wilder, AJ and Wilder, who's it going to be? And they never got it done. So Usyk's been good in that he's got a camp that has wanted to get all of these fights done to unify the belts once again, and B has gone and done it. I mean, he battered Dubois in this fight. It was a non-contest straight from the word go. Usyk comes out and he's just throwing these really tight, snappy, vicious jabs, just pop, pop, pop. And Dubois can't get close to him. And it forced him, and one of the reasons why he got caught, to kind of get a bit reckless and come in more, kind of a bit more ungainly, and he's trying to dodge a jab as he comes in close. And that's when there's a point just before Usyk first knocks down Dubois in the 5th round, where Dubois got him on the ropes, and you're like, oh, okay, this is Usyk being on the back foot slightly. But Usyk's so quick as well for such a big guy. And obviously you see him kind of doing his like break dancing around and stuff like that. But that highlights how much as a physical specimen he's got in terms of speed and control of his body, I think. And he's able to kind of deal with the initial burst from Dubois and then just times a good right hand just to chop Dubois around the head. And that's the kind of first knockdown that you get. And you almost don't see it at first until you go back and watch it again. And Dubois takes a cold one there. And then obviously that left just comes in and batters him as soon as he's up and he can't pick himself up off the deck. So this to me was a bit of a, as I say, a non-contest in terms of a fight. Usyk dominated him. And yeah, as the pantheon of greats go, I mean, there aren't many that have done the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, particularly in the last few years. You know, you had Lennox Lewis was the last to do it back in 99, 2000. There's a few on there, you know, Holyfield, Tyson, between the 80s and 2007, Riddick Bowe, Buster Douglas. And then after that, you're going back to the Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Muhammad Ali era. Sonny Liston. Like, they're all up there with some of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Usyk's automatically in that pantheon. And to do it twice, yeah, it shows that he is probably one of the best of all time, and certainly the best in this generation right now. I mean, you got to remember as well that he had to vacate the IBF title after opting to rematch Tyson Fury instead of taking on the initial challenger, Daniel Dubois. So it's not like he should have been undisputed heavyweight title champion all of this time, rather than having to give the belt back. And this is the trouble with boxing, is that you get the politics around all of the boxing federations want to have their challenger fighting for their belt next up, and it all gets a bit funny about who should get the next title fight against the world champion, especially when it's an undisputed champion of the world who gets first pop. So boxing kind of ruins itself with its own politics in that sense. But yeah, he's unbelievable. He's genuinely great to watch, and he comes across so well. I don't know anything about the guy in his personal life or anything, never met him, but he comes across very well, and that's always great if you've got. It's like heavyweight champion of the world's like being the 100 meters sprint Olympic gold medalist, right? Everybody knows who you are, and you're considered the fastest man in the world if you're the 100 meter champion. Everybody knows who Alexander Usyk is, and they know that he is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. You are the face of boxing in the same way the 100 meter sprint is arguably the face of the Olympics, right? It's incredible. It's the biggest position to be in the sport, and he's dominating it. Who's next? That I don't know. I don't know if anybody's close to him. And
yeah, I saw people talking about the young Briton who's only 20, or maybe Joseph Parker, but yeah, it's you're scrapping around, aren't you, for what could be a legitimate fight?
Yeah, I mean, somebody's mentioned Derek Chisora, and you're just like, what? I mean,
pointless. I mean, that Joshua is all pointless.
Yeah,
really,
I mean, those guys need to walk away. They're not even close to this level. So yeah, it could be Joseph Parker, but I don't think Parker's in Usyk's level. I mean, if I'm Usyk, there's a little bit of me, almost
Jake Paul.
take that money. Oh, I mean, I'd love.
Maybe he only gets one arm.
Yeah, it's probably still do him, absolutely batter him. But is there any point as a sportsman where you're like that, where like nobody's worth me fighting, and I've got all the belts? Do I just step away as like the greatest of all time? He's
nice age to step away as well, in the sense that you've taken the risks big time of being a heavyweight boxer until nearly 40, but it's those that carry on, isn't it? They get in trouble.
And the same thing a bit with Scheffler of like, if I don't think I think he loves golf, obviously, but like you're at the very top. Once you do that Grand Slam next year, if you win the US Open at Shinnecock, just, right, I did it better than Rory. I'm the best of this generation. And if this doesn't bring me, okay, I'll go and hang out with my family. I've got 80 odd million in the bank, but
Let's leave football for the end, because we're in that kind of odd, tiny portion of the calendar year where football does sink into a little bit of insignificance before the start of the season, certainly in terms of the men's game at least. Let's just talk women's basketball, Ollie, because this was an interesting story, and I want you to leaning heavily on the Ollie Wilson.
You want me to be the one to put my foot
Wilson
in my
money
mouth
maker
on
this week? Windsor just teeing up Wilson, but. Because, look, we've talked about Caitlin Clark, who's kind of the star of women's basketball over the years. But I want you to explain the story, because you'll do it far more eloquently and concisely than I will, Ollie. But this is a story that kind of transcended the sport a little bit, made its way onto the BBC sport pages and UK news media. So what's going on? The women want more cash, Ollie.
Well, this is it. If you want to put it bluntly, the WNBA players want paying better. And the subplot is... the WNBA players still seem to all hate Caitlin Clark, and they don't recognise that Caitlin Clark is going to be what gets them paid. So it's the All-Star game this week. Caitlin Clark's obviously involved in it. She's one of the best players in the world. And for warm-ups for the WNBA's All-Star game, all the players go out wearing black T-shirts that say, "Pay us what we're owed." There's a new, basically, collective bargaining agreement being discussed between the WNBA Players Association and the WNBA itself. And the players feel that they are underpaid. Angel Reese, who's another one of the big faces in the league, who came through with Caitlin Clark, they have a big rivalry. She mentioned a few weeks ago on a podcast, that we'll strike if we don't get paid what we're owed. We'll strike. You just need to pay us what we're owed. The big problem for a lot of people is that for many, many years, the WNBA has been making a huge net loss. Because it doesn't make any money. It hasn't had fans. It hasn't had big TV.
And it doesn't make any money, Ollie, because not enough people watch on TV or go to the games.
Correct? Yeah, there's no money for advertising if there's nobody in a stadium and if there isn't a big TV deal. So then there's no money for advertising, which means that there's no money to dish out. Now, if I'm right in what I've read, I think the WNBA players get 3% of it's either profits or revenue, and that's a big one to kind of work out, because obviously the WNBA hasn't been making a profit, but they get 3% of a total sum of money that the WNBA makes. Now in the NBA, the players who generate a huge amount of profit for the WNBA, that revenue share is 50% of what the NBA makes goes out to the players and is split across the players in payment, etc., via the salary caps. So they get a huge chunk of money. And the WNBA players feel that they should be getting a similar deal, maybe not the similar money, and that's a big thing to stress. They're not saying pay us LeBron James wages. They're saying we want a similar deal in terms of the share of the money, basically being way up higher. 3% is very little, 50% is a huge number. My suggestion would be find somewhere in the middle. So there's this big hoopla going on around this getting paid for the WNBA players. Going to the press conferences, Kelsey Plum and Sabrina Ionescu, two of the older heads of the league. Kelsey Plum, very vocal spokeswoman for the players in the league, being asked some questions in the press conference, and she goes on about the T-shirts and how it was a big stand that the players wanted to make. We wanted to do something unified together. She says, we had a meeting this morning, and then she suddenly goes on this little tangent of, I don't want to tattletale or anything, but no members of Team Clark were present at that meeting. And
she threw Caitlin Clark under the bus for no obvious reason.
And Sabrina Ionescu is sat next to Kelsey Plum in that press conference.
Giggling.
And she laughs, then looks at the kind of the press corps in front, rolls her eyes and kind of goes, That wasn't really needed to be said, was it? And Kelsey Plum's like, no, yeah, I'm just trying to make light of the situation. It's like, that's not making light of the situation. That's taking...
But I watched this clip, Ollie, and I didn't really understand it, though. Are they saying that Caitlin Clark wasn't part of the organisation process for the T-shirts and couldn't be bothered to be part of that?
So I don't know if they're hinting that she couldn't be bothered, or they're just... I think they're trying to protect it because they think that Clark will become a face of this move and get asked about it, and they almost, I think, don't want her taking the credit for the T-shirts and the unifying the players in this push for the players to all get paid. That's the only thing I can think of that would make sense to me of why you'd say that, because there's just no need to say Caitlin Clark and her team weren't present at this meeting. It doesn't help the movement. And it doesn't help Caitlin Clark. And at the end of the day, if you want the WNBA to be successful right now, you have to push Caitlin Clark out because, as we've discussed in this podcast already, TV ratings, seats at arenas drop by 50 to 60, 70% some places when Caitlin Clark isn't playing and isn't involved in the game. And to try and knock her off a perch that she wasn't even trying to be on, it seems, is a very weird move to make. And I don't know if you, from an outside perspective, kind of just looking at the situation very basically, why do the WNBA players seem to hate Caitlin Clark? Aside from the ones on Clark's team who physically actually have her back sometimes in some of these WNBAs, why do the players, and particularly the older players and Angel Reese, seem to hate Caitlin Clark and hate the idea of her having the spotlight?
What's confusing to me, Ollie, if Caitlin Clark was British and this was a British story, I would understand it, because in Britain, for all of its beautiful characteristics and attributes, as a nation, we do have a bit of a tall poppy syndrome, whereas when someone excels and sticks their head above the parapet, we as the British public, because we're naturally quite sarcastic in nature, and we like to think of ourselves as a bit of decorum. We're not so. What am I looking for? We try not to think of ourselves as so like egotistical like the Americans do. We kind of chop down people who get a bit too big for their boots, for want of a better phrase. So if it was a British story, I would understand it. I wouldn't think it was good or clever, like trying to chip away at Caitlin Clark's status, but I would understand it. But because it's America, I do find it slightly confusing, because America, and I love this about America personally, and you feel it whenever you go there. There's a sense that if you go to America, Ollie, and you say, oh, actually, I've got this idea for a podcast, your reaction in Britain would be like, mate, everyone's got a podcast. But your reaction in America would be like, I love it, Ollie. Let me connect you with this guy. You can really do it. You just need to keep going. And I tell you what, if you got this bit of kit, try and use that camera. That would be the difference in the two nations. And listen, there's a lot of bankrupt Americans. Like there's a negative element to that kind of relentless bet the house positivity. And there is some validity to the British. I don't know about that, mate. In this economy, you want to start? That's a bit. So there's a bit of that. But look, in America, that's I'm a bit surprised that it's come from America, because they usually celebrate success. And Caitlin Clark is obviously, and I say this as someone who has no knowledge of basketball really, but she's clearly such a standout success story in the sport that it's slightly confusing. But Ollie, I don't know, man. The best always get targeted in any sport by whatever angle people can conjure and create. And that's, I assume, without knowing Caitlin Clark, whether she's a wonderful person or not, that's the only thing I can think of, that she's just too big. She's just too big for the sport, and that is the easiest to target. And any little thing she does that people don't agree with, or there's an opportunity to stick the knife in, people will do.
But she's not even done... The trouble is with Caitlin Clark, at least to these other players, she's not actually done anything. Like, take this incident with... I mean, even in this, she hasn't done anything. She wasn't involved in the meeting. That's fine, but that means that she doesn't need to be said. Now, we also don't know whether she was even invited to that meeting. I mean, it blows up a load of speculation of like, well, why wasn't she there? Was she not informed? Did she not know? Is she not wanting to be a part of this? It just means we're going to talk about Caitlin Clark more than anything else after these comments, rather than talk about Chelsea Plum and the rest of the players that have unified them and done this great gesture. No, we're going to be talking about, why is it so fractured that she wasn't there? So by making this comment, you're just putting more attention on Caitlin Clark. And Aside from go out, and she literally just seems to go out and play basketball. You know, you see very little of Caitlin Clark going on like big podcasts or showing her mouth off about anything or anything like that. Again, not to bring it back to the golf, but she's got a bit of that Scotty Scheffler. She goes out and plays ball and lets the sport do the talking. And that's, again, like a pretty awesome thing to see. If you don't need to talk and you can let the game do it for you, that kind of shows you're above another level. So she's not done anything. But there are these players and comments, and it is coming internally from the WNBA. It's not coming from anywhere else externally, because the media loves Caitlin Clark. The media loves showing this girl. We're talking about this not because it's the WNBA, but because it's Caitlin Clark. That's why it's transcended into being on BBC Sport this weekend. That's why it's something that we're talking about as British people who don't even watch the WNBA, because it's her. And the reason why the WNBA had things like chartered flights this year rather than having to get on the like Delta Red Eye or something like that is because of the presence and the audience that Caitlin Clark has generated for that league. So her being there has...
Plus they're pretty tall, so they need a bit of extra space.
Yeah, definitely. You can't stick them in economy at all. But like her being there has generated a huge amount of growth for the league. And there are certain people at the WNBA, and then there are players, a lot of players within the WNBA, that still want to cut her down. Whereas if you cut her down, what's the net benefit for you in the long run? You're thinking like short term. And I can't work out, and this is going to sound so misogynist, and I don't want it to, but like, is it like a petty jealousy thing? Because normally in these...
Why does that sound misogynistic? I mean, men can be jealous.
No,
as well.
sure,
There's plenty of examples of this in male.
But I don't know if we've seen a jealousy. If this is jealousy, I don't think I've ever seen something like this in a men's sport in terms of jealousy, where you would be detrimental to the whole sport to cut it down. And I'm not saying it's a female trait. I just know that a lot of people would take the word jealousy and say, oh, you're just saying all women are jealous about that, because it's like an easy stereotype to make. But I've never seen...
Well, we had a good run, 52 pods, but we've officially been cancelled. But no, I take your point, Ollie. I think it's a fair thing to ask the question of. I think there's plenty of jealous men in sport, but there's no direct comparison off the top of my head that I can think of a sport being jealous of one individual.
Djokovic, Federer and Nadal all related to each other because they worked out that them all competing at the highest level works for them, and it drove them to work harder, and that made it better for tennis as a whole. Ronaldo and Messi going toe-to-toe at Barca and Madrid was one of the best things to happen for Spanish football, let alone global football. And it wasn't like Ronaldo went, oh, it's not fair, Messi gets all the applause. Ronaldo went, right, I'm going to freaking work twice as hard afterwards. I mean, he did bitch and moan every so often like everybody does, but in general, it drove people to work harder. And it seems like these WNBA players, particularly some of the older ones, are like, well, no, I'm one of the faces of this league. It's not fair. I don't see I'm going to go out and I'm going to get twice as good at shooting free throws. I'm going to start being able to shoot the long ball better like Caitlin Clark does. I'm going to start working on my distribution, my ability to read pick and rolls, etc. I don't see that coming as a thing from WNBA players. I see this horrible nastiness towards the person that is elevating their league more than anybody has done in the history of the league so far. It blows my mind completely.
One to keep tabs on for sure. Let's wander into the world of football. A couple of little bits I want to talk about, Ollie, right now. First of all, Paul Gascoigne's in hospital, by the way. Collapsed at home, and I think he was rushed to intensive care. So, yeah. He's only 58, guys. Obviously had his massive troubles with alcoholism and addiction and stuff. But I met him once at Waterloo Station at the WHC.
Did he acknowledge you, or was it like a... What did you do?
Yeah, no, I said hello and shook his hand. This is like 10
How did you
years
approach
ago
it? Was it like a... Did you go...
I just said like... I just said, oh, you're a legend, Gaza. It wasn't very clever. I just said, oh, because you know when you see someone who's super famous in real life, there's that shock element of they're always a bit smaller than you think. And it's always like, oh, that's that actual person in real life. I was like, oh, you're a legend, Gaza, and shook his hand, and that was that. But yeah, obviously a guy kind of really synonymous
no
with 90s
selfie,
football in England. But anyway,
no
let's
autograph.
hope he's all okay. Say
no
again?
Selfie, no autograph.
No. What am I going to do with an autograph, man? The autograph thing's very 90s, I think, and early 90s. What are we doing with an autograph here, folks?
I mean, you see it all the time still at sporting events.
Mate, I remember being a kid. Do you remember the cricketer Andy Caddick?
Yeah.
I remember my dad pointing him out in an airport, and I wandered over as a kid and got Andy Caddick's autograph. And at the time, I was like, my God, I got Andy Caddick's autograph.
That's the worst thing about private jet flights for these big people. is that you don't get to bump into like the odd athlete. Even if you see them like walking up the jet terminal, or they've come straight from the first class lounge or something, and you're like...
And airports are like one of your few opportunities that you're going to bump into sports stars, right? Because they're not in co-op, so the airports are the chance.
I met who was at the time the head of McLaren F1, Ron Dennis, at an airport. He was waiting for his baggage, and it's like, that's Ron Dennis, like. And he's just a normal person waiting for a bag, and I've got to wait for my bag. So at this point, we're on the same level as just humans. Like, and I went up and said,
"We're all in it."
And said to him, like, "Look, good luck with the race on the weekend," kind of thing. Like, he was like, "Oh, thank you very much." It's like, no, I think as well, if you just give these people just a, "Oh, hey man, like, thanks very much," or I appreciate X, Y, or Z, or something like that, rather than being like, "Oh my God, can I get a picture? Oh my God, can I get an autograph?"
Mate, it's the flyby. One of the best bits of life advice ever is be good and be gone.
Yeah.
Like, that's just one of the best bits of life advice. And I remember there's an American podcaster, for those that don't know, called Theo Von, and he's pretty famous now. And he said that actually anyone coming up to him in the street is kind of annoying because he doesn't have time for it and he can't stop 300 times a day. And he was talking with another American comic. And one of Theo Von's kind of taglines is gang gang, as I'm explaining to the audience now for those that don't know, because Ollie Wilson's a big Theo Von fan, and him and this other comedian were saying the greatest thing about being famous is just being like walking down the street and someone leans out of a car and just goes gang gang as they kind of drive past, and that's like the perfect level of fame and contribution from your audience.
Got to get it right though, because my dad,
it can't be more than that. Like, it's just
my dad met the great broadcaster for ITV F1 and ITV Champions League, Jim Rosenthal, in a market in Malaysia. The Malaysian Grand Prix was on, but it's like a market used to, back in the day when you had fake DVDs, so it used to sell like copied DVDs of all these movies, whether it was pirate copy or copying the original, and like fake Rolexes, fake Gucci bags, the kind of thing. And my dad sees him, and like he wants to say something, and my dad's a bit more kind of out there, louder than I am, and he goes, "Oi, you Jim, you cheap bastard, what are you doing here?" And then he wanted to say, "Give us a shout out on the F1 this weekend," but instead he got his words confused and just went, "Hey Jim, call me," and then walked off. And it's like, what the Jim Rosenthal.
Also, Jim Rosenthal's not famous enough. That's a really
you
funny
cheap bastard.
How did we get onto this, Ollie?
You met Gascoigne.
Paul Gascoigne. Yeah. Anyway, we hope he's okay. The other football story I wanted to talk about was Marcus Rashford going to Barcelona on loan. I just don't understand this, Ollie. Like, I just don't understand this. Marcus Rashford has had one exceptional season his entire career. The 2022-23 season where he scored 30 goals in 56 games, all competitions. Aside from that, there is nothing in his career to suggest he should be going to Barcelona, who are in this incredible moment. Barcelona won La Liga last year, an incredible squad of footballers. Marcus Rashford, I think he's 28 in October, so it's not even like you're betting on a bit of potential. And it's just an odd one. I just don't understand it. I mean, he's a forward that's had one exceptional career, a couple of like half-decent seasons, but he's had one exceptional season in his entire career. So if you're Barcelona, are you just betting that we're Football Club Barcelona and we can extract that season from him again at nearly 28? Otherwise, I just can't see it. And I know you might say, oh, it's quite low risk, the loan move. I'm sure Man United are picking up a chunk of his wages, but it's an unusual one for me. And look, I hope it works. And there are examples of players who can replicate one season wonder later on in their careers, and Marcus Rashford would be hoping he's one of them. But one thing I'd say as well, Ollie, is there's no margin for error here. Like, it's now. Like, it has to happen for Rashford now at Barcelona in this moment. He's nearly 28. This is his peak. You've got an unbelievable move that you could never have anticipated going to Barcelona after what's happened the last 2 or 3 years, falling out of favour at Man United. So, yeah, where do we stand on this one?
I can see there being the potential for a Fabian Delph-esque, Barca in the changing room, and Rashford's like, we just got to get forward. And Hansi Flick's like, well, no, Marcus, actually, that's not quite what we need to say. Like, we're looking to move this ball around in this way and stuff. But, I mean, you kind of said it already in terms of it is a loan move. There's not a huge amount of depth at the moment on the books at Barca, aside from youngsters coming through to back up Rafinha and Lamine Yamal. So it's a cheap option. It's a solid option of a player who's got experience at top-level football. Actually did all right at Aston Villa. Wasn't a bad loan pickup at all for them. So has impressed enough to deserve at least some regular football at some level in the Premier League.
But not enough for Villa to go in for him.
Yeah, that's the interesting one. Unless, Premier League clubs selling to each other inflates the price so much more, doesn't it? And I wonder if Barca, obviously they have the credence that they can say, well, look, we'll bring you in for a loan move. If it works out, we might be able to make a kind of a permanent move for you or something like that. And that's enough because it's a Barca at the end of the day. You've got a chance to shine at the biggest club arguably on the continent outside of Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. So it's a move that works well for both in that it's cheap for Barca, it's an elevation status for Rashford, and he is going to get some game time because there will be a need to support those two on the flanks at various points. So it just works out all round.
It's an unbelievable move for him.
Yeah, it's sensational. If you told Rashford while he was sat on the bench at
Thomas Gravison to Real Madrid back in the day.
If you told Rashford while he was sat on the bench at United and couldn't get a game at all, just ride it out, mate. In 12 months' time, you're going to be playing at the Camp Nou or the Spotify Arena or whatever it's called. Like, it's awesome for him. But he's got to do the hard work of going into Barca and not being I'm Marcus Rashford and being, right, I'm going to start learning the language. I'm going to learn from what Trent's been supposedly trying to do with Real Madrid. I'm going to start learning the language. I'm going to be a team player. I need to learn maybe a different style of football. I need to play the style of football they want. I can't just pick it up, run and hope kind of thing. But there's a chance to impress, and I kind of hope it works out well for him.
There is, but look, I hope it works for him because I think it's a fascinating story. But he scored 7 goals last season, all competitions, and 8 goals the season before. From a forward, he hasn't hit double figures in 2 years. I mean, it's really, really not great. So I think it's an unbelievable move for Marcus Rashford. Unbelievable. Just while we're on Barcelona, because we didn't talk about this last week, but I did want to squeeze it in, and it feels like there's some validity with this. Do you know what I'm going to talk about, Ollie? This is pretty left field. No. Lamine Yamal's 18th birthday party, where he hired a bunch of dwarfs. Oh, yeah,
the dwarfs. And
I want to be slightly careful about this.
Women with a certain breast size were hired, wasn't it?
I mean, yeah, look, the male's certainly not always the
most sensible,
the bastion of accurate journalism, but they've kind of called it his dwarf and escort party. I don't know what you did for your 18th birthday, but yeah, look, something probably slightly different to that. What do you think about that? Is there any concern there from Barcelona, or is it just, you know what, he's an 18-year-old kid, it's the off-season, he's having fun, he's not hurting anyone, I don't know, he's employing these dwarves who, by the way, have come out and a few of them said, look, we want to work, we're an entertainment business and there shouldn't be any heat on him, and obviously it's a sensitive issue because I'm sure there's a lot of people in that community that feel the opposite, but there's a counter-argument as well.
You're never going to please everybody.
You're not, but maybe don't hire dwarves for your 18th birthday. That'll be an easy win.
Unfortunately for Lamine Yamal, he's trying to have a Maradona-esque party in the era of social media. Like, we've all heard the stories about like Maradona's freaking private mansion away outside of the city in Naples and what went on there and all that kind of stuff and everything that gets swept under the rug. And we've heard similar stories about so many players that have had links and rumours to things. There's loads of English footballers. We don't know. We don't, Ollie. But you don't.
And he's a different personality. He's a different man. He's a different character. Different, nationality. All of this. But we know he wasn't doing that consistently.
I don't know. I mean, again.
Well, if he was, he kept it pretty well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just how well you keep these things hidden. I mean, the number of stuff that comes into the press about like the Chelsea boys back in the day and stuff like that. I mean, none of it's good. And it's just stupid. It's people with too much money, too young, and I mean that like they deserve the money they're making because they're making millions upon millions for their clubs and associations and leagues, and they deserve a share of that. But it's just we don't know what it's like being that young, where you've done crazy stuff when you were 18, right? Like
also everyone's saying yes around you. I think that's the thing. When you're Lamine Yamal, like there's so many people part of his orbit that are just, oh my God, I'm close to Lamine Yamal, and Lamine Yamal says, oh, should I have a small birthday party for my 18th, or should I have a big birthday party? I mean, what are you saying if you're a friend of a friend, or you're around him, or you're his agent, or is you're his fixer, or whatever?
It's the stupid drunk conversation with your mates that escalates into like, man, we've got the money to do this. We should just do this for a laugh because we've got the money and it doesn't affect us.
So it can actually happen.
So why not? Like, haha, would it be really funny to bowl dwarfs down a slip and slide? That would be really funny. We could make that happen. I'm pretty sure I've heard of a dwarf place where you can hire the dwarfs that will do that.
Next thing you know, you're on their Instagram account DMing them. You've arranged the money, and
yeah, like it's just an unintelligent move from a young man who will learn from this. I'm not trying to give him a free pass, but I also it's just not.
He's 18, as I say, he hasn't hurt anyone. I think it's fairly harmless, but also you can't be doing that all the time. That's the end. It's the off season.
Would anybody have batted an eyelid if it was just the women with a certain breast size that were invited?
No, what you mean? You think it's
the dwarf thing that's kind of made it a bit more of a. It's more unique, and therefore it becomes a more interesting story, and then it has larger potential for it to be offensive, right?
That's tricky. I mean, rich people spend money, and rich people spend money on weird shit. And that's one of them. He could have bought...
Elon Musk wants to go to space all the time. I mean, that's weird. Why do you want to get... There's no air there. You can't live in space.
It's weird. Mate, if you were given the opportunity to go to space, would you?
No, not a chance. Not until it was 99.9% foolproof, and you can go up there and still have a beer and a burger for $5, like an old Weatherspoons days. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't, because, mate, I haven't been to Tokyo or Rio. Or do you know what I mean? There's loads of places on planet Earth that I'd love to go to. I haven't. So, as you say, going to space, even if it's 99.9, it's still, pretty risky. And, for what exactly?
I've never been up Snowdonia. I'd rather do that before I go into space.
I'd rather go to Snowdonia.
That's high enough for me. Going up Mount Snowdon, I'd much rather.
So, Snowdonia is beautiful, beautiful. I mean, honestly, when the sun... If you climb Mount Snowdon... And that lake near the bottom on a summer's day, Ollie, it's just absolutely gorgeous. One other thing on Lamine Yamal before we kind of wrap up the pod, well inside the 59-minute mark today. But one other thing on Lamine Yamal is the question mark throughout the season was, is he as good as Messi at the same age? And the answer is yes. He is as good as Messi at that age. But the second part of that question is, okay, now can he do it for the next 20 years? Can he put up those wild numbers for the next decade and be consistently, relentlessly, unequivocally at that level for not 2 seasons, not 3 seasons here and off for 2 seasons, and then can he do it just absurdly consistently for 15 years? So he's fulfilled the first part, technically and in terms of talent, he appears to have the same quality that Messi had at that age. I mean, we've seen it. But now can he go on and do it for the next 15 years? That's the harder of the two, really, isn't it?
I did see this weekend the first use that I'd seen of the new rule that's coming into football this year, the 8-second goalkeeping rule. And it was weird because it happened in the middle of the...
Explain it to people, Ollie, who aren't aware
So,
of it.
New rule coming into football. It's been tried and tested in the under-21s Euros this summer. I didn't notice it being brought into effect in that competition. But basically, if a goalkeeper... It used to be... Was it 12-second rule?
Something, but very...
And it was never enforced.
Not enforced.
Of basically a goalkeeper holding onto the ball in his hands for 12 seconds. Now they've changed it. It's an 8-second rule. And if you go beyond the 8 seconds, the referee can give a corner to the opposition. So it's to prevent time wasting. Because if you're 1-0 up with 2 minutes to go and your goalkeeper's holding on for it for 10 seconds, and that gives away a corner suddenly to the opposition, that's a big set piece to give away if an equaliser comes from it and you end up in extra time or whatever the repercussions are of it in the long term. So finally saw it brought into effect this weekend in a pre-season friendly that I was covering. And I don't actually dislike it at all. If it's enforced strictly, it works. The difference is you've got to work out, and I haven't read the official rules on it in terms of the FIFA rulebook or whatever, but when do you start counting the 8 seconds? Is it once you're stood up? Is it the goalkeeper holding on to it, and once they have control of it on the ground, you start the 8 seconds? Because they're two very different things. You know, we've seen goalkeepers lying on the ground for 4-5 seconds. If they've suddenly only got 3 seconds to get up and distribute, that's a short period of time. If it's once you're up and then you've got 8 seconds, you know, that's a bit more leniency, but obviously that's more difficult to enforce because you've got the time wasting beforehand and then the 8 seconds anyway. But in principle, and seeing it put into action this week, yeah, it's a good rule. I think it will make the end of games a bit more spicy and a bit more free flowing.
Yeah, I'm a fan of anything that speeds up the sport. I've ranted numerous times on this pod about plenty of introductions to the game that have actually slowed things down, or maybe not statistically slowed things down, but just feel like they've halted the momentum. The cooling breaks, the 5 subs, VAR, etc. All those things have slowed the sport down. And generally, for my money, anything that slows the sport down it doesn't improve the sport. And anything that speeds it up does improve the sport. So this, in theory, Ollie, will scare the game. Exactly as you said. The clearest example of this is a team being 1-0 up into the last 10 minutes of the game. Goalkeeper holds onto the ball, and suddenly you can see the corner. And it will happen that a team scores an equalising goal from that corner, and then that goalkeeper's not going to hold onto the ball in the future. He's learned his lesson, and then it will get distributed very quickly. I think what it does lead a lot to, Ollie, is the ball being punted long. Yeah. Because those extra seconds, that is more of a kind of rollout, the Pep Guardiola 5-a-side game at the back, build from the back. Whereas I think goalkeepers 5, 6, 7 seconds, I've just got to get rid of it. I'm smashing it long. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, by the way, but I think you'll see a lot of that.
I also think that's a huge benefit still for the team coming the other way. Because if a goalkeeper just is a bit rushed and has to just hoik it long, what do you generally see? There's like one big man up, kind of the first line of defence, and everybody else sitting behind the ball a bit anyway for a lot of sides, maybe not your Barcelonas, etc. So then the ball's straight back in possession anyway. So it's as good as a corner because it's just hoiked upfield, and then you start at the halfway line and you kind of get to go again. So I think it works. I just wonder as well, do you put like a shot clock on it? Like a clock in the stadium? Do you have fans?
No, you don't.
No? Okay.
No.
Just so
people can count to 8.
You'd like to think so, but there's the that was 8. No, it's 8. Do we make it a VAR rulable decision? How long did he hold on to it? Let's go back and check on VAR. Should it be a corner or not?
Well, the minute we're doing that, we're back at slowing the sport down, aren't we? I think we can trust our referees to counter. To count to 8, mate.
But there will be, I cannot wait for midway through the season when there's a Sunday morning breakfast show going, and look how long he's holding for it here. 1, 2, 3. We put a clock on it. It's 9.5 seconds. And that's where we'll get
And from the moment they grab the ball, if a goalkeeper comes up, collects the ball from a corner, by the time they fall into the deck, held onto it, you're 3-4 seconds in, right?
But that's again, where is it? Is it the point of grabbing it? Is it the point of landing on the deck? Is it the point of getting up?
Do you get more goalkeepers pretending they're injured a little bit just to kind of eke out those seconds as they fall? I don't know. It'd be an interesting one to see unravel. Any other business, Mr.
The Lionesses, obviously getting through past Sweden, coming, were they 2-0 down? No, or were they 2-0 up, sorry, and blew it. I've been struggling to follow the Women's Euros, I have to say, just with a few other time constraints that I've had, and obviously following the golf religiously for about 5 days and travelling to Ireland, etc. But one of the worst penalty shootouts I think I've seen in terms of quality of penalties. I saw it was 3-2, and we've been at the golf that day, and I was in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock, so we've been up since like 4 a.m.
One thing I'll say though, Ollie, also bypassed me just purely because it's the tiniest window where I don't watch football really, sort of back end of July. But one thing I'd say, Ollie, is they don't need you or I to watch it, because 7.4 million people watch that on the BBC. Yeah. And that's a lot of eyeballs. In a country of 65 million people, guys, that's a lot of eyeballs. So the popularity of women's sports, there's no question the trajectory is going in the right direction. Yeah, I know the penalty shootout was a bit mad and everyone missed pens, etc., etc. But the biggest takeaway, really, apart from England progressing, on a more macro point of view for women's football, 7.4 million people viewed that. Those are big numbers.
And the quality's so much better. At the international level especially, it's so much better than it was. It's really good, I think, now. The top teams at the international level are very good compared to what we saw even in the last tournament. Go back 10 years, the change is remarkable in terms of the level that we get in the international game. I think the club game's still got to come up in terms of there are very much haves and have-nots, but the haves are still very good. And yeah, it has been for a couple of years now, but it's a good product. It's a good product to watch.
And if I'm not mistaken, Ollie, there was the first £1 million women's footballer the other day. I don't know if you saw this one, mate, but it was Olivia Smith. Arsenal signed Canadian striker Olivia Smith in Liverpool for £1 million, a new record in the women's game. I mean, that is a kind of it might not seem like an important thing, but certainly in the men's game, that 1 million barrier was almost like a psychological milestone of, oh my God, who was it? Trevor Francis?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you know who it was? It's Trevor Francis. Yeah.
Was it Trevor Francis? Yeah, his first £1 million footballer. And that, it does break that kind of it breaks a little bit of a ceiling in the sense that, okay, someone else has done it. Someone else has paid £1 million for a footballer. So then there's a legitimacy that we're going to do it.
It only goes up. It only goes up
Yeah.
from here. And I just hope women's football doesn't escalate like the men's game has done in terms of it went from 1 million to 10 million to 100 million in a pretty quick span. But yeah, it's been good.